We got Lane Hutson on pace to break the rookie record for assists in the season to finish top 5 in rookie defenseman assists in the season, top 5 rookie defenseman scoring. We got some Jakub Dobes stuff. We have the Habs quarter century team. And Jesse, best of all, we have to talk about the Habs trade talks. There's a lot of talks around the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are reportedly having a fire sale right now. We're going to dive through their roster. We got more talks about Simon Nemec. We have a lot of great stuff coming up on this live episode of Habs Digest. Again, apologies for the technical issues. Hello, everyone in the chat. We totally weren't streaming while thinking we were live. That's totally not what happened. Jesse, I'm very excited to get into this once again.
So happy. You know, we're not going to forget about you guys. We love our lives. We love our fans. I feel like we have like the best Montreal Canadiens community, but also one of the best hockey communities on YouTube right now. Like, we just appreciate our fans so much. You guys are the very best. And now we're so happy to be live. So if you guys have any questions, you know, we love doing these videos kind of together. So happy to be here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, I clicked go live on YouTube and we started going like we normally do because it said you're live. And then I think a page crashed or something off my screen because we didn't go live. So we were streaming and we're like, why is this only 40 people? Why is no one talking to us? No, welcome in everyone. Canadian dude in Oz, Joseph Donovan. We got Alex in the chat saying Hutson to meet on back-to-back caller. The Cabbage Man himself is in the chat, Jean Poirier. Again, sorry about that. I was like, Jesse, we're not late, are we? And this is, vous êtes en retard. I'm like, no, I don't think we are. It doesn't matter. We're here now. We're ready to get into this. Thank you all for being here. All the 170 of you. That number feels a lot better. The first thing we want to get into, though, no, the Habs did not make a trade in the chat, but there could be some good opportunity. We got a lot to talk about. But Jesse, I want to first go into the Habs quarter century team, and we had a bit of a trial run just then. So if you guys haven't seen this quarter century team, this came out just today. It's basically the greatest Habs team since the year 2000 to 2025, and they value longevity a lot, of course. It's not just peak performance, it's kind of the whole thing. But Jesse, there's a few things we notice when we look at this team. I mean, we got Saku Koivu, we got Alex Kovalev, Tomas Plekanec as the top trio, with Andrei Markov, Shea Weber on D, and Carey Price in net, with the second team being Gallagher, Patches, Nick Suzuki, with Surrey and Subban on defense, with Jose Theodore in net. Feels weird not to have Subban there with Price, but I totally understand that you put Weber on the first team over Subban. Fair enough. I mean, Subban did win a Norris, but with the Habs, but whatever. Weber arguably has the, anyway, he was the captain. There's a lot of other things there. But Jesse, there's a few things that we got to talk about here. I know you have a couple things to say about this. First of all, is it ever great to look at these names again? And I know a lot of people in chat, you guys have your thoughts. I want to hear all your memories of all the players here. Name the player here that you identify with the most in the past 25 years. There's a lot of great stuff there. But Jesse, what do you notice here with these couple of lines here for the quarter century team?
A lot of nostalgia, players that we grew up, but we're really seeing the evolution of this team that's happening live right now for the Montreal Canadiens. We look at kind of that first line of Kovalev, Koivu, and Plekanec. Obviously, there's respect there for Saku Koivu.
Oh, yes.
Obviously, the second most tenured captain for the Montreal Canadiens besides Jean Beliveau. But Josh, it just kind of gives me hope that we're heading in the right direction because I don't know, like, again, no disrespect, but I'm taking a Nick Suzuki, a Cole Caufield, let's say like a Slafzilla kind of over that top line. Like, we don't need to go 25 years to kind of scour those players we need. Like, we have that in Montreal right now because we noticed that, with these players here, we had not one of them was point per game once, throughout their career, right? We see we're having that now with Nick Suzuki, with Cole Caufield, even Lane Hutson showing the possibility of being able to do this. So it just shows that like the best days of this future is to come. And there's really been some really great decisions being made because this team was able to have some success, through this run. They're able to make it to a Stanley Cup final, but now we're kind of having those solid players, but kind of with that game-breaking talent that you really need in today's game as well. So for me, it's just showing how really bright the future is for the Montreal Canadiens and that we really shouldn't be taking it for granted.
I think you're bang on right there. Like, again, these names are amazing. The Montreal Canadiens, though, for the past 25 years, have had a lot of years of the team's good. Let's add a lot of good players, and it's made the team good enough. I mean, we've finished like high up in the standings lots of times. We've had lots of fun and great playoff runs. 2014, of course, ended in disaster. Got a bit of revenge last night. Yeah, sure, whatever. It doesn't really count this far into the future. Of course, we had 2021, but like over that whole time, not a whole lot of all-stars is something you're seeing here. Like, of all the players here, of all the players on this list, so on the first team, 5 of not even all-stars. Plekanec was never an all-star, right? Like, your guy on your first line of the quarter century team wasn't an all-star, and on the second team, again, Gallagher's never been an all-star. So it's like, you know, there's not that super top-end talent. I love a lot of these guys, but I think you make a great point, Jesse, in that when we're looking towards the future, a guy like Demidov, like, one of the most electric prospects ever for the Montreal Canadiens, probably. And you look at a guy like Hutson, who's already putting up historic numbers that we're about to get into later in the show. You have a guy like Nick Suzuki, who's the captain, who's a point per game at 25 years old. Cole Caufield on pace for over 40 goals, point per game again at the age of like 23, 24. The future looks so bright when you like, these guys are great, but I think it's a very good point you make looking towards the future. I'm going to read through a few of these chats because I think a lot of people are making good points too. Thank you, Combat World, for saying best channel for Habs news coming to Ritual to watch. Well, thank you so much. We love everyone coming into the show. Like, we could not appreciate it more. Josh Anderson's a huge story. No, Josh Anderson, we will talk about Josh Anderson, I think, a bit later, because I'm seeing a few people mention his name, not for this quarter century team. No. But we got a few other people in here. Good day, Canadian and Oz. Joseph Donovan, of course, saying Josh the Beast. I think you're talking about Anderson, not me, but I'll just pretend you're talking about me. 93 Cup team I started watching when the Pens won the year before. Canadian dude and Oz, 25 years ago was just 5 minutes for me. Absolutely. Joseph Donovan, Sohwa, Vinny Damfus, Kirk Muller, the old school boys, Denis Savard, Spinorama, baby. Savardian Spinorama. So there's a lot of people saying that Kovalev and Markov were their guy. Gallagher was their guy. Jesse, if you had to pick one guy, this is kind of an on-the-spot question. I have my pick of the 12 players that we see here. Koivu, Kovalev, Plekanec, Markov, Weber, and Price. Gallagher, Patches, Suzuki, Surrey, Subban, and Jose Theodore. There's one guy that sticks out to me as like my favorite, and it's more of a growing up guy. Spoiler, it's not Suzuki or Gallagher. Do you have one guy that sticks out on this list, or are you just pretty much like remembering them all fondly?
I really love goalie. I think I know where you're going with this with Carey Price. It's an interesting situation with him where he was so good, but the team was never quite on his level, right? We're now maybe just a couple of years after he retires, we see we're probably this team getting near the level where then you put a Carey Price on this team where they can very much make some, some damage. That's the way, obviously, the cookie crumbles. I've always been a big goalie guy. Watching the Montreal Canadiens for years, like just so much entertainment, so much enjoyment and appreciation for Carey Price. For other players on this list as well, I would say honorable mention to Philip Deneau, somebody that I think myself and many people watched for many years, appreciated their games. He was just one of those guys that stood out for me early, like, who is this guy? Like, he's just playing the game right, So anyway, amazing career for him. And yeah, huge shout out, obviously, to Carey Price, the man here.
I had a feeling that's where you were going with this. And honestly, very soft spot for me for Price as well. I would pick Price, Jesse, if it wasn't for my boy Andrei Markov. I mean, look, in my very formative years,
really?
I'm not saying Markov's better. I'm just saying in terms of my favorite Habs of all time,
nice.
My formative years of learning to be a hockey fan, Michael Ryder's the reason I got into hockey. And at that time, right around 2006, 2007, this is pre-Carey Price era, Price turned into like my guy for many years after Ryder left, but Markov left such an impact on me as a young hockey fan, loving what he was able to do, especially on the power play, just on the defensive end, being physical. He was that guy that I gravitated to all the time. So I know it's a bit of an interesting one, not what you expected, I think, but he's my guy. We got a lot of people talking in the chat. What a fun thing to talk about. Someone saying, where's Patrick Roy? This is since 2000. This is the quarter century team. This is not an all-time team. If it was, that would look very different, but I love the interaction we got here now. But Jesse, I think it's time to get into some Jakub Dobes. What do you say?
Let's break it down.
Let's break it down. I want to talk a bit about something he said just recently, actually, just last night after the game. And I don't have his stats here. I think we all know what they look like. They're very pretty, though a little less pretty after giving up 4 goals in the last game, though even more pretty after those amazing saves that he had. He said, these guys are nuts. The best crowd I ever had. I said it before. It gives me goosebumps. I didn't want to look around because I knew, but I'm really happy to be part of this. It's the best place to play, and it's a privilege. And look, it doesn't get any better than that, Jesse. Of course, after those 2 saves in overtime, I don't have the video anymore, but those 2 saves in overtime, my gosh, like, was it ever electric? The Bell Center gave him a standing ovation. Can you imagine the adrenaline pumping through your soul when you make those kind of saves? I mean, like goalies in beer league games, you make one decent save and the adrenaline's pumping, and this dude does that in front of the Bell Center. A guy, that was his first game at the Bell Center, by the way. I somehow didn't clock that last night. He's now 5-0 in his career, 2 electric saves in overtime. He's been to overtime 3 times now, Jesse, in his 5 games. He's let in 1 combined goal in the third period and overtime of all of his 5 games. This is as clutch as they come, and I'm just so thrilled that he's not taking it for granted either.
He's been giving us goosebumps with the ways he's been playing. And so nice to hear the love. In his first game in Montreal, he's saying this was just beyond anything else I've ever played. Like the absolute best place to play. So amazing to see that he's just having such a great time in Montreal right now. And a lot of people kind of bringing up, obviously Jakub Dobes is from the Czech Republic. Like, is he the next Dominik Hasek? Obviously, big shoes to fill. A little bit of a different style, a little bit of a different build there and everything else. But I mean, that like Hasek was definitely one of my favorite just players, kind of growing up.
So
like he was
watch,
just
man.
absolutely so phenomenal. I think every kid, playing ball hockey at one point, they're throwing up the legs, wanting to, make those stack pads like Hasek and everything. Like he was just the guy. So obviously a history of producing some phenomenal goalies. And as we see, like now, of course, of over 5 games, 5 straight wins, it's starting to make that first shutout win, Josh, against the Florida Panthers, no less, the Stanley Cup champs, not look like a fluke. Like it almost kind of makes us reassess that game. Like, okay, no, this guy meant business from the very beginning, and he's been able to just kind of build on that. It just makes that win. Okay, get a win in your first NHL game. Do it against the Stanley Cup champions, but not just that, like shut him out and then be able to continue on this and kind of battle when he needed to last night to kind of get the W. Like he's just shown a little bit of everything right now. 940 save percentage, 1.5 GAA. Like he's just going to give your team a chance to win every night when you're putting up numbers like that.
Yeah, it's unreal to see, what he's been able to do. And honestly, we both pretty much said it. Like we both called it after that Florida game. We were like, doesn't he just look so calm? Like, Jesse, there's sometimes you watch like a young goalie. Like, look, I don't want to make this sound like, oh, I knew he was going to fall off. But like when I watch Archer Shilovs have that incredible run with the Canucks, there was something about it, right? You see a little instability, a little shakiness, letting a rebound is way too juicy, but he's not, he doesn't end up paying for it later. There's like these little hints and clues that like maybe this is just a flash in the pan. But with Dobes from day one, it was like, this dude's solid. Now, again, this doesn't mean that he's just gonna, he's not gonna have bad games. But you could argue that some of the goals he let in the Rangers game were not ideal. Now, a couple of them were bad bounces, bad turnovers. It's not like he was put in a prime position, but like he was beat clean once or twice. And that's fine. That's totally fine. But even then, he was still so clutch and solid and like used mistakes, maybe. You could even argue that he didn't really make mistakes, to like funnel that into his own like intensity and just lock in even further. So the thing with Dobes is that he looks extra calm. Last night was his worst game. I think you'll agree with me in terms of rebound control. Last night was probably his worst game. He had like, whoa, no, God forbid, he had like 4 bad rebounds, and he still bounced back so incredibly. So I think, Jesse, that's my biggest thing with him is his calmness and his ability, like, and he sees when he doesn't make an ideal play, and you can see it in his face. He shakes his head. It's subtle, right? I think there was one time, I feel like I saw the puck hit his chest or his glove. It dropped to the ground, and then he covered it. He shook his head. He's like, that's the kind of thing that makes a great player great. Those little mistakes, not being satisfied with it, and improving as the game goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's always those indicators there. Like you said, it's not just the results that he's gotten, but it's kind of his way of doing it as well, right? Like, just looking so calm, looking so poised. Obviously, his game management, I think, is so good as well. So he is just playing absolutely so well. And it's just nice to see him get that reward and really get to feel that love from the Habs fans for a long time, because they have a lot of appreciation for how he's playing right now. Obviously, he's stepping up his game, but you have to feel like these fans, that's just going to kind of continue to kind of encourage him just to kind of continually step up his play right now.
Now, Jesse, I have one final question before we move on to some fun Lane Hutson stuff. The Habs play the Tampa Bay Lightning tomorrow night. Tampa Bay Lightning, the Habs are only a few points back of the Lightning, which is kind of insane to say. Does Jakub Dobes get the start?
Yes, I think, obviously it's like you don't want to do something where you feel like you're slighting Montembeault, but I think once, you have a backup goalie, and if you have that backup and he's showing that he can kind of win games, I think it's just a thing where it's like, if Montembeault is winning, you play the hot hand as well. We've just had a lot of back-to-backs recently where we kind of had need to alternate a little bit, and it makes sense to do so in those situations. But other than that, obviously, I think that you need to ride the hot hand. This team has kind of shown that they're about winning games right now. Even small things like putting Beck kind of in the lineup right now, it's kind of showing like the carry trade, showing how they want to be more competitive. I think getting Dobes into that spot and playing him again there will be another indicator of showing how this team wants to compete. They know how tight it is, so there's really no time to be slacking.
Yeah, I think that's it, right? It's a tight playoff race, and actually, I'll just show it now because I have the graphic. We'll talk about it. Well, not that, a little bit later, but like after Boston won yesterday, again, Montreal is sitting 2 points out of a playoff spot. They were just 1 point out yesterday, but of course, Montreal, Columbus, and Ottawa have all played 2 fewer games than Boston. So really, Boston at 52 points. That's all Montreal needs is one, like, you need 1 win and then 1 extra point. 3 points over the next 2 games, and they'll be safely ahead of Boston. So anyway, there's some interesting stuff to get into on that front. But I put a poll in the chat to see, will Dobes start versus the Lightning? I'll let that run for a bit, see what you guys have to say. In the meantime, I'll go through the chat again because you guys love to chat, and we love having you guys in there so much. Of course, reminder, we do answer channel members and any type of donations in priority order. So if I don't get to your message, you're not a channel member or donate, I'm so sorry. I will try to, but as you can see, the chat gets crazy. Subscriber only mode as well. So if you're not subscribed, we got daily Habs content every single day. I know I remind you guys a lot, but like there's so many, there's hundreds, literally hundreds of new people subscribing every day when I remind you. So if that's you, so statistically it's half of you, and you want to stay up to date, hit the button now. We'd really, really appreciate it. I'm gonna read through some of these chats here. There's a lot of people here. Caufield a legend. Dobie's a beast in that OT was insane. It really was. I'm loving what Hutson's doing. He's a show on his own. We'll get to him in just a second. Joseph saying, when I was young, I played like a Dominic Hasek / Patrick Waugh goalie style. I mean, hey, pretty good idols there. Hashtag Team Goat, hashtag Habs Digest. Hey, thank you. Joseph saying, Richard Zednik was tough. I liked Zednik. Of course, that neck injury on the Panthers was crazy. Demi got better than Michkov. Mitch who? That's right. Like Jesse, I tend to follow goalies. Plante, Gumper, Vachon, Dryden. Wow, what a list there. You know, I can't say I was alive seeing Jacques Plante, but I have a Jacques Plante St. Louis Blues hockey card, Jesse. That might be the most cursed hockey card I own.
Nice.
Isn't that weird? That's almost as bad as like a Guhle Rangers card or something, you know? Anyway, something. Joe's saying that's how it used to be going with who was hot. Too worried about feelings nowadays. Dobie should start. Interesting. Dvorak gets a ton of great chances that misses the net, says RPM. True. We also got Doug Saylor saying, become a member. It is so worth it. Doug, thank you so much for the 7 months, Doug. One of our loyal Rocket Richard members, one of our first ever Rocket Richard members. We got to get a call going soon, Jesse. We got to get a call with all those Rocket Richard tier members. We got Doug, we got Alex, we got Brian, we got Mark, we got so many people. We got Pierre Laudreau. We got, of course, Simon Deschardins. We got a lot of people in there. Can't wait for that. So thank you so much, Doug, for that kind message and also re-upping your Rocket Richard membership. It means the world. Any comments, any of that, Jesse? A big thank you to Doug as we're about to hop into some Lane Hutson stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Big shout out to Doug again. You know, just so amazing. It's a place where we can end up making friends. You're meeting new people. We're able to meet new people as well. So cool that obviously this community is growing and we're getting to share on some great Habs action together.
Oh, it's so awesome. And you know what's also great about having a channel membership is you can send all those emojis we got in the chat, which are really fun, especially in the comment section after a game. I love seeing those Line A scoring the goal, all those Line A sunglasses emojis in the comment section. So thank you guys. Time to get into Lane Hutson. Oh boy. This is what the title is all about. This is crazy. So hold your horses here. That's not what I meant to say. What's the hang on to buckle your seatbelts. Right? Lane Hutson, guys, is insane. No, wrong picture. This one. It's okay. What you're seeing here is the list of rookie defensemen scoring all time. The best seasons for rookie defenseman scoring. So you can see Larry Murphy's number 1. The most ever assists by a rookie defenseman is Larry Murphy with 60. And then Chris Chelios with 55. Gary Suter with 50. And a bunch other in the high 40s. Most points ever by a rookie defenseman. Again, Larry Murphy with 76. And then you got 71, 68, 66. Why am I showing you this? Well, I think you might know where I'm going with this. Because we're talking about Lane Hutson here. And when we're talking about Lane Hutson, we have to show you his projected stats. Now, I could do the math and tell you. Why don't I show you? Because Elite Prospects, they do this for you. They show you the 82-game sample size of Lane Hutson and what those numbers correlate to. So, Lane Hutson has 38 points, 35 of which are assists in 46 games this year. That correlates to a 67-point pace, 62 assist season over an 82-game season. So, what does that mean? Well, let's just go back. 62 assists, 67 points, Jesse. That would give him the most ever assists by any rookie defenseman in NHL history and it would put him solidly fourth above Phil Housley, Ray Bourque, and Chris Chelios for most points ever by a rookie defenseman. Now, I'm not saying this pace is going to be sustained all the way to the end of the season, as Lane Hutson, this is going to be his first time playing a full 82-game season. Maybe the fatigue will set in, though he doesn't seem like the type where it will. But also, Jesse, you got to take into account, this dude has been better as the season's gone on. He's been better in his last 25 games than he has in his first 20. So honestly, to even have him in the same conversation as these guys, we've said it before, but to see it put out like this is unreal.
Especially given the historical context that in the 80s, we know like scoring was up on average 20% more than the league average of scoring today. So the fact that he's still on par, continues to be on par with people like Brian Leach, where the scoring was much higher and still getting that type of point production is absolutely unreal. And when we kind of break down what Lane Hutson is doing and really analyze it right now, the argument for him winning the Calder just becomes clear and clear, because there's kind of main things to look at. It's obviously like Hutson right now, out competing like his next competition, he has more points than the next 7 rookie D-men combined. He is just, there's a reason why Martin St. Louis says that Lane Hutson doesn't look like a rookie. Like, he is just light years ahead of his peers right now in terms of playing. And then you kind of combine that with, obviously, leading all rookies in points. We're talking about forwards as well. And that's kind of starting to grow. As he mentioned, like, he's just hitting his stride right now. Like, he is just starting to get cooking. He's not even in full sprint mode. Like, we're not even there yet. On a side note, I digress. But guys, imagine Lane Hutson in the playoffs. Like, how this guy is going to take it to a next level. Like, we saw the reason why we tried, the reason why we got the W last night was Lane Hutson, like the hustle where has that puck, he's skating down the middle of the ice to enter that blue zone. Like, he is giving it everything he has. You can never question like his effort, his compete. And for me, it's like, that's just one thing we didn't know, to have so much skill, obviously, like, be such a character person, but to play with such effort, with like a kind of a fire in his belly every single time is truly what makes him special. And for me, in my eyes, what is really locking down the Calder for him.
Yeah, I don't want to come back to that Athletic article, but, average compete. Sorry, I have to. Every time it's mentioned, this dude gives his all every single play. That last play where he was able to set up Caufield, who set up Slaf for that goal, like, it's just the effort, the IQ to be like, I'm jumping in the rush. And he does it so often, and he almost always does it at the right time. Now, again, he's still prone to bad games, like that game against the Leafs. It wasn't his best. I don't think he was horrible, but he definitely made some mistakes. He was the worst plus minus on the team, sure. But the fact that we're holding a rookie to that high standard, that he got a point as a defenseman, and like, he still made a lot of solid defensive and offensive plays, but wasn't like, a top 5 player for the team. Is that really our standard for this rookie defenseman? Like, it's crazy, but you're very right. Like, his effort, his compete, let alone the points he's putting up. He's 5 points ahead of Michkov. This is just points. Let's just show assists. He has 35 assists, which is nearly double second place. Michkov and Celebrini only have 19 apiece. This is like borderline unprecedented, right? And again, you look at this list of all these guys in the 70s and 80s. No one has had Lane Hutson-like production as a rookie since the friggin' 80s. And like, Brian Leach is the name that we've talked about in terms of Lane Hutson before, but you're absolutely right. Like, he's the front runner for the Calder right now, and for good reason. The Lane train is going full steam ahead. It's unreal, and the chat is going crazy with it too. He has more points than the number 1 pick. Like, yeah, exactly. Now, Celebrini's played fewer games. I think he missed 6 or 8 or 10 or something like that. So Celebrini could be like a near point per game player this year. But yeah, like, we got some chats too. Like, OMG, Phil Housley, never heard his name in years. Sabres, I think, right? He played with a bunch of teams. The Sabres, was it Jets too? I'm not even sure, but he was a very good player back in his day. Very good offensive player. Four Nations will give these young guys like Hutson a nice body break. That's a good point too, Jesse. Not just the young guys, the old fellas too. I can guarantee you David Savard has that date knocked off on his calendar, ready to go rest right for the second half of the season. Reinbacher is 20. People saying Reinbacher's young. People laughing at the fact that Michkov has fewer points. But yeah, it's really, really unreal. We got the Lane train emojis here. We got RPM saying, I grew up with Larry Robinson. Hard to beat him for best in my life. Well, there you go. RPM talking, going back to the quarter century team. But yeah, Larry Robinson was also a fantastic defenseman. But unreal stuff, Jesse. At this point, like, I don't know. Do we just do a projection? Like, do we just try and guess how many points he's going to have at the end of the season? I don't know. Like, I might just say, like, I don't know. Let's look at this list. What if I said 65? What if I said 65 points, right? 65 points, that ties him with Ray Bourque for top 5 ever among defensemen and puts him number 1 in Habs rookie defenseman history, which would be just above Chris Chelios. It's 2 points shy of his elite, of like his pace right now of 67 points. I'm going to say he gets a couple more goals, loses out in a couple of assists. Say he finishes with like 7 goals, 53 assists. Or sorry, 7 goals, 58 assists, something like that. I don't know. That's just me spitballing before we get into some of the trade stuff. But I think him finishing top 5 ever among rookie defensemen would be so cool.
Definitely. He's on pace to get most assists by a rookie D-man ever in a year right now. I'm saying he's going point per game for the rest of the year. Like, I think that he's really just starting to get in his own. Again, when we're kind of calculating his points and kind of projecting as well, it's like Celebrity's missed some game, but, obviously Hutson's missed some time out on that PP1 where he started. He's just been, obviously a cannonball on that since he's been on there. So I think that obviously, like, might say it's not like he waited forever. I think he could have done it a little bit better. I think kudos to him, though, for not taking forever to kind of make that decision. Obviously, Hutson, the way that he's playing, he couldn't justify it otherwise. But, considering that and obviously just kind of projecting for next year and these future years, like Lane Hutson being a point-per-game player, I think is just unreal. And what, the implications of that is really for this team as a whole.
I think that, so if he goes point per game the rest of the season, 36 games left, some quick math, Jesse, that would be 74 points. That would be second all time behind only Larry Murphy. Can you imagine? And can you also imagine if he, keeps up with the assist pace, but marks 2 or 3 more goals and stays point per game? Just about point per game with a couple extra goals. I'm just saying, Jesse, this is getting into crazy talk territory, but I'm just so excited to see what he can do, especially with Demidov next year. We got the lane trains rolling in the chat. Unbelievable stuff. We got a ton of stuff to talk about. We got a few more things that I want to get into, but in the meantime, just, in the middle of this stream, all I'm asking is for a like on the video. It helps us out, like, surprisingly, way more than you guys could ever know. A simple like on the video or in the stream pushes us more than you could think. Even just one person doing it means a lot, and we'd love to hit 100. We got almost 400 people in here. Hitting 100 is a big goal we like to hit every stream. So thank you so much all for being here as well. Like, these Monday streams are just like the highlight of our week, seriously. Jesse, I think it's time for some trade talk. Look, I know we have opinions of what's going on in Pittsburgh, but I think the chat might have a field day with this. You ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
All right. So Marco D'Amico, we've used his stuff in videos a lot. Of course, he was a Habs beat reporter, but is now heavily involved with, he still kind of is, RG.org. And RG.org has had a lot of breaking stories about things like Ivan Demidov, stories around the league. And he today tweeted this. A source close to the Penguins has informed RG Media that Jakub Dobes is looking for a fire sale. Big name veterans, not simply just pending free agents, are up on the trade block, and the Penguins are also willing to retain to move out Erik Karlsson. More on this below. Before you guys send your Crosby to Montreal comments, he actually made a follow-up tweet that said, all the Crosby to Montreal comments are the laziest, not funny thing ever because he is untouchable in the article. Crosby and Malkin untouchable. So before you mention that, that's not going to happen. As much as some of us would love to have it happen, Jesse. I know we've talked about it on this show before. Yeah, I guess you never really know, but definitely not in the plans right now. However, if I pop this up, there's a lot of names on this team. Now, they say there's a lot of guys that they're willing to move out. They said even aging veterans. And so my mind immediately went to Chris Letang, Jesse. And I want to hear the chat's thoughts about Chris Letang. We have our thoughts on him. He's been linked to the Habs before. However, that was before they traded for Alex Carrier, who solved a lot of their defensive issues on the right side. We still have Logan Mailloux. We still have David Reinbacher coming up in a few years. Chris Letang is on a 3-year contract still after this year, making $6 million. He's 37 years old. He's under contract until he's 40, making $6 million per year. Is there any world where you bring him into Montreal as maybe if you ship Savard out, you kind of just bring Letang in, you eat these few years, and maybe at the end of 3 years, you bring up a Mailloux or Reinbacher? I don't think so. I think it's too much money. I think it just adds too much complication. But I think it's a fun thought experiment because a lot of us do like Chris Letang, the Quebecois boy.
For sure. And he has expressed potentially some interest in coming to Montreal with obviously, and we might get into some other players as well. We've seen a couple now kind of, speaking about their interest and potentially joining the Habs there. But obviously, I think it's just two ships kind of passing in the middle of the night, kind of not quite meant to be there. I think we could maybe, if we're going to make like a big splash in free agency, I see maybe getting like a vet kind of top pairing right-hand defenseman. Like Chris Letang several years ago is kind of what we need right now. Our top 6 is starting to get pretty busy. I'm starting to like that. I'm wondering if Kent's going to make a move that, get a vet, but more kind of in their prime, kind of within that. I say anywhere from 28 to kind of maybe like 31. We said obviously even that's a little bit old, kind of depending. I think anything older than that, it's not really fit that window that this team is looking for right now.
Now, I will say, Montreal, like, they could use a little extra spark on offense. I think they're doing great now, but again, extra offense never goes astray. And there's one player on the Pittsburgh Penguins that comes to mind, and he actually has the single best game ever for a player in his position, and that's Alex Nedeljkovic. He had a goal and 1 assist in a game the other day. Jesse, he was the first ever goalie to get a goal and an assist in the same game. Add him to the forward core, and you might have something cooking. No, I'm joking about that. We're not trading for Nedeljkovic. However, that was sick. That was crazy that he's the first person to ever do that. Look, there's some other names like Erik Karlsson. Again, Jesse, like if it was Erik Karlsson 5 years ago, like okay, but at this point, not for that. Like, look, if they retain 50%, and you get Erik Karlsson for what 2 more years after this at $5 million. Even then, like I don't think it makes much sense. Like I see a lot of people in chat saying Karlsson's too expensive, no to Letang, but also people expressing that like Karlsson with Hutson could be a lot of fun, very dynamic offensive pairing because Hudson's working well with Matheson. Though I will say Matheson's better defensively than I think most people give him credit for, as we're seeing. People saying Letang too old. There's a lot of stuff there. I'm seeing Brian Rust in chat. I'm not sold on Brian Rust because again, you're paying $5 million for another 3 years for a 32-year-old who's almost certainly past his peak. There's one other name on this team, Jesse, and that's Rickard Rakell. And I think for both of us, we're kind of in agreement that, like, I still don't think it makes sense, but he's probably the closest guy that, like, sort of makes sense in the sense that Rickard Rakell's making $5 million this year, and he's making $5 million for the next 2 years after this. And he is how old? Let's bring that back up. He is, where is he? 31 years old, and he's got 3 years left after this one. 31 years old. He's on pace to have a really good season, Jesse. He's on pace to have about 40 goals. He's on pace to have a near point per game season on 70-something points, low 70s, I think. Now, he's playing with a lot of their best players. He's averaging 19 minutes time on ice. He's played with Crosby. He's played with Malkin. He's shooting almost 20% this season, which is well above his career average. At $5 million, even if he's getting you 50 to 60 points a season, you can eat that because it's a lot better than the $5 million contracts Montreal has now. But even then, it's just like, I don't know. He's the most interesting guy to me, and I still don't really see him as being a fit long-term.
For sure. Good player, eye test whenever you're watching him play against the Habs or anybody else for that matter. At the same time, it's like, if Kirby Dach isn't playing so well, if Slav isn't coming to his own, I'm a lot more interested in those type of conversations because having a veteran who could score goals, there's some good value on that for a young team. But our top 6, we know with Demidov kind of coming in with Patrick Laine here, it's starting to get, kind of full really quick where we're going to need to be very strategic about those decisions. It's going to need to make a lot of sense. It's going to need to be the right fit. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we know, Malkin, Crosby, Crosby obviously would be that better fit for playing that center position. I think you could argue, but as you mentioned, kind of a non-starter. There are some people kind of putting out like, okay, this is what it would cost to get Crosby, kind of potential. Let's say the Habs are in a playoff spot and they're looking to really be buyers. Obviously, this is a crazy scenario, but like they're saying 3 kind of like premier tier kind of picks, for Crosby, and then like 2 kind of secondary type of assets. So we're talking anywhere from like 4 to 5 assets, 2 to 3 of those being like top tier, right? Like that's such a huge haul. And obviously I think that Nick Suzuki, again, a little bit of a non-starter, but just more of a shout out to Nick Suzuki. Like he's the leader of this team. In fact, I would argue like how much sense does it really like make bringing a Crosby or even a Malkin into this team again, looking at our top 6, looking at what we want to build. Like for sure he's an amazing player, but it might get in the way of some things that we're looking to kind of build. So anyway, all that to say, it's like, it's a little bit of a compliment right now that we're really liking what this team is kind of building. We're looking at a team like the Penguins, not very long ago, a pretty decent team where we're going like, we're starting to be picky. Like, I think we're liking a little bit more what we got going on right now.
Yeah. And I think too, you got to consider the fact that Montreal, like they're going to have to pay their guys, right? And even though right now, objectively, Rickard Rakell, for example, is outperforming his contract, like he's putting up the numbers of a $7 to $8 million player, at least offensively, like $7-ish million, I guess. But it's hard to tell because the cap's going to inflate a lot of this stuff, right? So he's putting up the numbers of like easily a $7-ish million player in terms of offense. But he's only making 5. The thing is, like, if you're building a team like Montreal is, you want to have a lot of guys on bargains, right? You don't want someone who's worth their value, which is probably what Rakell would be if he's not playing with some really, really good players. So you bring him to Montreal, I mean, I don't know which line you stick him on. The second line with Dach and Laine? Probably. But, like, okay. And then you just got like a 32, 33, 34-year-old Raquel who just last year had 37 points in almost a full season. Like, there's concerns here, right? So when you look at overall Pittsburgh, you're very right. Like, Montreal can afford to be picky right now. There's no need to go all in this year, and I don't think Kent Hughes has any intention. I think he has intention on winning games, but a move like that locks you in to like a medium-sized contract for like term is just not something that makes sense with what the Habs are building. So I think you make a great point, Ben. I see a lot of people in chat also kind of saying like, there's just not a lot that makes sense here, right? Some people were saying Raquel could make some sense. Of course, you got people talking about Crosby, but you know, there's some other things there. As Mystic says, they need to just be patient. They have the pieces, they just aren't there yet. For sure. RPM saying Dach needs to spend the entire offseason with a good face-off coach. Definitely don't disagree. Joseph saying Raquel could be worth a try. I see a lot of people talking about Noah Dobson, Jesse, and maybe we'll get to him someday. Because that's not a bad fit, actually. I kind of like him too, because he's like established and fairly young. I think. How old is Dobson? I feel like everyone's young, but I think he's kind of young. Anyway, hey, look here, Mystic. Great point. Everyone, when we start doing good, just wants to rush the rebuild and trade pieces we drafted. There's no rush. Exactly the point. Great point. But there is one guy though, Jesse, that I do want to talk about a bit more, and I know we're both kind of on the side of like, I don't think this trade makes sense either, but I want to discuss it because I want to hear the fans. I want to hear the fans' perspective on this, and I'm gonna. Whoa, no, not that. I'm going to make a poll. I'm gonna make a poll, and I'm gonna put it live as soon as we show it. Not gonna say this out loud. For this certain guy who is a friend of a certain player on the team. And that person, Jesse, is, nope, not Lane Hutson. He's friends with everyone. Simon Nemec. Simon Nemec, of course, the former number 2 overall pick. We've talked about him before. And this is a quote from Tomasz Prokop, who has a lot of great sources on the European side. Fantastic follow if you don't follow them on Twitter already. It's hard to say. This is a quote from Nemec. It's still too early to request a trade. If this situation continues, it will have to be addressed. But for now, this is how it stands. And Simon Nemec, of course, has been playing a lot in Utica this year. However, he's looked really good for Utica, especially in the past 10-ish games. This dude's been on fire. He had a 5-point game. He is looking amazing. But he's kind of blocked out in New Jersey's D-core, Jesse. They have a lot of guys signed for term that are better than him right now. You could argue like, hey, former number 2 overall pick, he should be proving himself enough to make the team anyway. But he's not really happy with what's going on in New Jersey. And a lot of people say, you know, he's buddies with Slav. Could he go to Montreal? I know your opinion on this. I got the fans polling right now to see whether they trade for him or not. In a vacuum, I would say yes. Because like it's not every day you can get a 2nd overall pick. However, I don't know. Like, I'm not sold on the fact that he would fix many problems for the price you'd have to give up for him. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this? I have some more thoughts, but I want to hear yours.
This is a player that has value. So depending on where he'll going, you know, similar to Juraj, like he's going to get a little bit of a haul. And what makes this situation interesting is Montreal is one of those few teams in the league that has the prospects, that has the picks to make a deal like this happen for a Simon Nemec. Absolutely. Do I think that they should do it? No, not right now. I think that, you know, by getting Carrier, getting that's kind of the direction we needed to lean in. This is a very young team, and we're kind of going a little bit too much in that direction where we're able to kind of balance that a little bit. We're still a young team, but trade that out to get a little bit more of that vet experience. And that this is where this team came off. And I really look with all the young guys kind of coming up as well that we're going to want to balance that with a little bit more of that vet presence. I think for that top pairing, you know, that maybe Reinbacher's in the future, we might need somebody to kind of hold that down a little bit more in the interim. I'm not convinced how much of an upgrade Nemec is over Reinbacher yet. That's still completely to be determined there. You know, absolutely. I like Reinbacher. I like his personality. I like that he has this quiet confidence. I saw a lot of indicators, call it intuition, anything else that, like, for me, just seeing him at training camp last year, where I had a feeling, okay, this guy is going to be good. And not only that, he feels like a Montreal Canadian. He kind of falls into like that mold of like a Juraj Slafkovsky, of an Ivan Demidov, these high draft picks that the Montreal's taken that are highly skilled, but also high character players. We're hearing all the time now in the NHL about all these talks in locker rooms and players not getting along. And not to say that everything is always perfect, but like Montreal, for large part, has a very positive and together room. I think it's kind of like the envy of the NHL in a lot of ways. The fact that they have so much cohesion, probably something that we don't talk about enough, that just these guys spend a lot of time together. They like it. I think a big part of it is the environment that Martin St. Louis has built and everything else like that. So maybe a pass right now on Nemec. Josh, I want to get your thoughts, though. There's rumors. It's not confirmed yet. We have been hearing, from some good sources, though, about Ehlers wanting to play in Montreal. What is your thought? Like, free agency, are you bringing in Ehlers? Are you not? Why?
Wow. That's a great question. In a vacuum, yeah. Like, let me get his stats up. Let me get his stats up real quick, because this Ehlers stuff, there's a reason. Like, we didn't prep it for this stream, like in terms of pictures, but it is something that we definitely wanted to talk about, because I can't find substantiated rumors of this, but I've seen floating around that apparently Frank Saravalli said that Nick Ehlers is eyeing Montreal as a free agent destination. However, I could not find that source from Frank himself, just a couple of websites that were quoting Frank. So if one of you can find the original source that talks about this, I would be very appreciative, because I don't want to report on something that's not confirmed. However, Jesse, we have heard lots of people talk about Nick Ehlers in relation to Montreal before, especially because of the relationship that he has with Patrik Laine. And so there's some very interesting things on that front. But before I get into Ehlers' stats here, which I will bring up in just a second, I want to read some of the comments here, because we got some channel members coming in, including Mark Orr, a Rocket Richard to remember. Mark, great to see you here in the stream. We said earlier we'll be getting another Zoom call going very soon. He said he voted yes in terms of trading for Nemec, as Jesse, 53% of the chat voted yes they would trade for him, 57 no. Very split on this decision. But as Mark says, the price is the big question. And someone else says, like Derek Rundell, another loyal channel member, what does it say to Reinbacher? No to Nemec. Like, what if you might have to trade Reinbacher for Nemec, which I don't think Montreal would do, because why would you? Like, Reinbacher is a very different style. He's bigger, he's very smooth on his skates, but he's more solid, well-rounded, whereas Nemec is a little more offensive, definitely has potential to be a game-breaking defenseman at times, but he's very electric when you watch him. Like, some of his end-to-end rushes are, so it's like very different players. But anyway, and Derek also said, don't underestimate Bogdan. Of course, Jesse, we are founding members of the Bogdan Kanyushkov fan club. So I just wanted to highlight that and some more chats here. Mark, again, I have no worries about Reinbacher as long as his injuries are done. He'll develop into a great top 4D. Canadian dude in Oz, there's something to be said for moving players to be with their countrymen and players that they're familiar with for the right price. Laval would be a good place to kick the tires. I don't think he'd be happy there, though. That's the whole thing, right? It's kind of the big problem here. So let's go here and let's bring in Nick Ehlers' stats. Actually, no, hold on. Let me delete this here, and let's go here, and then let's bring this in here so that you guys can all see it. Here are Nick Ehlers' stats. And Jesse, to come... Oh, as we get a super chat from Jamie Haywood. Jamie, if you send anything in the chat, we will answer it. Again, we do answer super chats in priority. Thank you so much, Jamie, for the $2. Your first super chat. We really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Mystic saying Reinbacher is more of a two-way defender. I mean, that is true, too. I realize I have Nick Ehlers over that whole super chat thing. However, I'll put him over my face. He is a winger, as people are saying, but I think that'd be fine, Jesse, considering, like, right now, Newhook's our second-line winger, and let's be honest, his production hasn't been great. He's looked good, production's not there. Nick Ehlers has 38 points in 38 games this season. He's 28 years old. He's going to be looking for a longer-term deal, I'm sure, though we have heard reports recently that players are going to be looking to take even shorter-term deals. I'm going to move it down. I don't know where to put it, like, maybe here, maybe some people, maybe you can see it there. Shorter-term deals, because of the cap going up. I'm going to put them up here, actually. That's much better. The cap's going to be going up, so players might be looking to take shorter-term deals to capitalize on the bigger contracts later. And he's been good, 61 points in 82 games, 55 and 62, 46 and 47, 25, 30-ish goal scorer. He's good friends with Laine. At the right price, especially if he's one of those guys that might be looking for maybe a closer, like 3 or 4 year deal to capitalize on the next cap going up, I would not be opposed. I think he's actually like one of those prime examples of a guy who's not too old. He's right in the heart of his prime. And if you can get him for his prime, I don't think he'd settle for 3 or 4 years. I'm not opposed to this. I want to know what you have to say, though, because I know it's going to come down to price at the end of the day.
We do have a very good winger coming over this summer.
We do.
And then Ivan Demidov. But interesting all the same. I'd say, like, once again, this is contingent on Kirby Dach. And it's kind of this balance that Kent Hughes is going to need to find. And it's going to be very important that he finds this soon of, like, it's this thing where you want a balance of giving Dach the proper time to develop, because obviously him becoming a very good center could become really valuable for this team. At the same time, you don't want to wait forever to see how he's going to pan out, because you want to know how this top 6 of this team is really going to look like, because he is so dependent just on everything else. Like, if Kirby Dach kind of pans out and you feel like he got a 2C, okay, yeah, maybe adding a vet now kind of to the wing, sure, that maybe makes sense. But if Kirby Dach doesn't pan out, we need to have a vet, I think, at that 2C spot
Mm-hmm.
that's an established player that shows that he can produce respectably at that clip. You know, we're talking about close to a point per game sort of thing to really complement Nick Suzuki. I think it's okay if Nick Suzuki is not that 100-point type of guy. Just as long as you're 1C or 2C, they could get close to being point per game. I think that could kind of balance out really nicely. And our 2C doesn't need to be quite that point per game player, but I think pretty close to kind of balance out with Nick Suzuki, I think is the ideal kind of makeup of this team, of what you're really kind of going for. Obviously, Nick Ehlers, very interesting. Point per game this year, 61 points in 82 games last year. Basically, though, like whenever he is getting like an 80-point game or 80 points, rather, where he's playing like 82 games, he's going to get you at least like 60 points. What's interesting to note is over his career, like he was able to do that early on in his career of getting like 60 points, 82 games. You'd almost expect him that to kind of increase a little bit more over his career. But again, being a point per game, maybe he's kind of showing coming into his prime right now of what that can kind of really do. Obviously, there is some chemistry with Laine as well. He got that signed Montreal Canadiens jersey per his request, I might add, just recently when they were in town here against the Habs. So this is an interesting player. I don't know if I have a definitive answer on that because it's based off of Kirby Dach. You want to see what's going on with him. But like, Josh, how long are you waiting to see what's going on with Kirby Dach? Like, to make these kind of other, do you think that you need to wait for that to make the decision? Are you giving the end of this year? Or are you giving midpoint next year? What's your thoughts on that?
I think that if you have the opportunity to sign, if the price tag and the term is something that Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton are okay with, like just in general, in a vacuum, assuming all other things equal, I don't think the question mark of whether Dach will take a jump next year will drastically affect a good signing in their eyes, if that makes sense. Like, I think Kirby, I think you're very right that could have a big effect on it, but contingent on a big jump. Like, Kirby's been great recently. I want to see how the rest of the season goes, because we're talking here off season, right? So we still have half a season to see of Kirby. But if we get to the end of the season and Dach slowed down for the last month or two of the season, and whatever, then you're maybe looking at something like this. I mean, I have another idea though. Like, a lot of teams, especially contending teams, have like top 6 level players playing the third line. They might have 1, they might have 2. So I'm just thinking, like, just being realistic and assuming like maybe Kirby Dach never takes that top 6 leap. I think he still can. I think he very well still can. I think he's playing some phenomenal top 6 hockey right now. However, let's play devil's advocate here. Let's say Kirby develops into a really solid 3C. That'd be ideal if Kirby Dach is your 3C on a contending team. And let's say Demidov ends up playing center. Like, there's things you can do, right? There's ways you can manipulate the line. And that's very wishful, but also kind of other not so wishful thinking on Dach's side, but wishful thinking that Demidov would play center between a guy like Laine and Ehlers, or maybe some other winger, or maybe it's Demidov and Laine with some other center that the Habs on, like you said. So I don't know. I feel like we're running out of time to just say, let's just wait and see. I feel like we've done that too much. And I think this offseason, Jesse, is the first one where we're going to start to see decisions being made that aren't as predicated on the hope of the young guys getting even better. I'm not saying that it won't be part of it. I'm just saying as the years go by, it's going to become a smaller and smaller part of that equation.
Yeah, you don't want to miss out on some actionable time there. Kirby Dach, I think you make a decision on this by the end of the season, at least for a large part, is that if Kirby Dach is playing really good, you go under the premise that, okay, we got our 2C, we're going to just give him a little bit more time to develop, not completely sold, but you give him that longer runway, and then that opens you up to get a vet winger. But if Kirby Dach, for whatever reason, just really kind of bottom out, we do not want that to happen. I don't foresee that. I see really positive, all his signs, all possible, indicators are showing that his game is going upwards. But let's say he finishes this season in a little bit of a slump there. Then for me, I'm not going to get a veteran winger in my top 6. I'm looking to get a veteran center. So that's sometimes where knowing what's going on with those players really affects your decisions of where you kind of go with that. So I think that Kirby Dach really is at the center of this, and it'll be important to figure it out this soon to really see how the rest of the team really shakes out as a result.
I saw someone in chat saying Newhook Evans, Terry said Newhook Evans Dach as a third line would be lethal. It would be, but that's kind of like, I don't know if I want to say it's a lot of money tied up in a third line, but it kind of is, because Dach and Newhook are still in these bridge deals, and we don't know what Evans is going to sign for. Like, if we re-sign both Dach and Newhook, there's worlds where they're both over $4 million, and Evans is too. And then you have another $12 million third line that might not produce at that, right? So you got to keep in mind the contracts as well and how you structured the teams. There's a lot of stuff going on there, but I'm going to have one final look through the chat, guys. We've talked about so much of this stuff. It's fun to talk about. You guys have been amazing. I think that's probably going to do it as the last subject. So if any of you guys have any last minute thoughts, if you want to send in a message again, if you're a channel member, we'll try and read those first. Otherwise, donations will get priority, but we're going to end this here in just a couple minutes. I want to read through some of the chats here. A lot of people talking about some very interesting things. Mystic saying Kirby's going to break out. Derek saying Slaf, Suzuki, Caufield or Ehlers, Dach, Laine, Demidov, Evans, Anderson, Heineman, Beck, Gallagher, Demidov, Evans, Anderson, Ehlers, Dach, Laine, Slafkovsky, Suzuki, Caufield. So you have Demidov on the third line to start. Again, playing slight devil's advocate, that could happen, especially like maybe in the first 10 games of the season. But I think, Jesse, we're both on the same page that like this guy's too good to be stuck on the third line for more than a tiny part of the season, which is going to demote one of those top 6 guys to a third line role. Yeah. Derek saying that's what fans want for sure. Demidov will potentially be third line to start until this is basically what I just said. We got Mr. Prodigy. Pierre McGuire on Sick Podcast said he thinks Yanni Gourde would be a good fit in Montreal. Did he say that? Well, maybe that's a nice video topic, Jesse. That could be something. Too small, maybe. Avs GM said they aren't trading Mikko. Mystic saying seen on TSM, pretty sure. Very interesting stuff. Mikko Rantanen is another guy we mentioned. Hey, he's a free agent, but we'll have to see. But Jesse, I think that'll do it. My gosh, what a stream today. We had almost 500 people in here. A ton of talks about the Montreal Canadiens. It's always so fun to dive into this stuff.
Absolutely. And we know that there's just so much to be excited with this team right now, really what they're building. Like, Josh, we feel like this is a little bit of surprise. Like, we felt like they were going to take a step up, but just like Dobes playing the way that he is, Hutson, obviously, Caufield, Suzuki, the list just kind of goes on right now, not to mention all of our prospects just ripping it up in these other leagues right now. So obviously a really exciting time, and they're showing some solid indicators that they're really just ramping it up down this bottom of the stretch. And this is the time when you want to be playing good hockey. If they do get into the playoffs, they're going to be putting themselves in a very good spot of being a hot team, of have played a solid, more than half of the season of really solid hockey, which they can build on. So we're not saying that we are that Cinderella team this year, but we're saying that, we're not saying that that's absolutely not going to happen either, because we know what this Montreal Canadiens team can do. We're getting some hot goaltending when it really matters the most. But right now, it's about kind of building for this team over this next stretch of game. Like, they know what works for them. They know getting that puck in deep. They know how to play in that neutral zone, everything else, playing that team game. I think we have so many players right now, like Lane Hutson, obviously like Nick Suzuki, players, Evan, Savard, who are always putting the team kind of ahead of themselves right now. And that's what's really making it exciting. If we are to get into the playoffs, we got some gamers come that time.
Yes, we do. I mean, we're in such a big win-win situation right now. Like, if we make the playoffs, holy crap, that would be so fast into a rebuild that it's almost absurd. Like, the progression year over year. Even if we don't make the playoffs and we stay close, we've learned how to win. We've seen such good development from so many young guys. Slaf coming in really into his own. Second half Slaf certainly seems to be a thing already in these last 2 years. Kirby Dach finally bouncing back from injury. Patrick Laine on, if you prorate his production to an 82-game season, he's on like 55-goal pace. There's so many great things happening with Montreal. No matter what happens, we still got Demidov coming next year. We still have Reinbacher to develop. We still have young guys like Mailloux, Hua, Beck, Engstrom, and Laval. It's unbelievable. Oh, and Jesse, we got one final super chat from Doug. Doug, great to see you in here again. He said, I want a copy of Jesse's Habs Digest flag. Well, let me tell you something, Doug. Maybe you can tell him. That's not quite a flag. That's something much more special than a flag. And I'll tell you, it's going to be hard to find a replica of that.
Yeah, got it painted and done, for the background. It's nice to have something real in back as that background there. But Josh, we're getting some merch going soon, and I think that's definitely going to be part of it. It's having, if you want to have that background as well. Obviously, we're going to be looking at some hats, some t-shirts, so lots of exciting things to look forward to in 2025.
2025 is going to be a big year for the channel. It's already started off so hot, and that's thanks to all of you guys. Like every single one of you watching, whether you're a new face or a long-time face, like many of the chat members here. It's been unbelievable to be able to do this as long as we've been able to do this, and just to see the support increasing with the team's success. So I'm just going to say one last time, guys, if you wouldn't mind just leaving us a like. We do this every single day for us, but also for you guys, right? If we get hit 200, we're 32 away. That'd mean the world to us. It'd be incredible. And hey, subscribe while you're at it. I know there's a lot of you, statistically half of you are not subscribed. We got weekly live streams, sometimes more often. We have daily videos every single day on all the latest news, post-game reactions, all that great stuff. But that'll do it for this live episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Guys, thank you so much every day for all your support. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.